Everybody's moving to Charlotte, but most people don't have a clue what it's really like living here until after they've already moved here. So, if you can't handle the bumper-to-bumper traffic, the rising costs of living, or the wild weather that we get around here, before you spend crazy money moving to a state you might hate, let me tell you the truth about what it's really like to live here. Come on.
Is living here gonna break the bank? One of my favorite parts of living in Charlotte is the beautiful skyline and the bustling streets. Living here and moving here, it feels like a beautiful, rich city. But what does it really cost to call this place home, especially compared to some other places you might be coming from, like the Northeast? Housing here, just like the rest of the US, is on the rise, but it still is significantly more affordable than many other major US cities. In fact, homes in Charlotte are about 30% cheaper than the national average, with a median price coming in at about $360 currently. And it's going to be anywhere from 40 to 60% cheaper than the total cost of living in New York. So if you're coming from the Northeast, like many of the people that choose to move here, you'll be saving a substantial amount of money every month. In fact, the utilities, transportation, and grocery costs here in Charlotte is a little bit below the national average by about 7%. So really almost anywhere you'll be coming from that you might be considering calling this place home, unless it's just crazy cheap wherever you are currently, you're going to be saving some money every month, especially if you're coming from New York, which has an overall cost of living about 70% higher than Charlotte, North Carolina. And food and groceries in New York are about 17.5% more expensive than here. But while the city does have many financial advantages, there will be some considerations that could weigh on your wallet. Many neighborhoods have seen sharp increases in prices, which can make it more difficult for people to move here. And many people do not realize that every new and resale automobile title transfer comes with a 3% tax. And for reference, the average salary in Charlotte is about $68,400, which according to the Bankrate.com cost of living comparison calculator would be equivalent to about $114,000 in Brooklyn, or about $159,000 in Manhattan, New York. So it's significantly cheaper to live here than many areas of some of the most popular places that people move to this place from. And if you're curious what sort of home your budget could buy here, you can scan the QR code up here. I'll send you a list of all the on and off market properties available in Charlotte, so there's no guesswork. You know exactly what you might be able to buy, and you're able to see whether or not it could make sense for you. So now that you have a good idea what it costs to live here, let's talk about what you can make living here. Does Charlotte have the career opportunities and job market you've been looking for? So you might have heard that Charlotte is the second largest banking hub in the entire United States, just behind New York City. We'll see how long New York City is able to hold on to that one. But Charlotte's not only banking, there's a lot more it has to offer, with a ton of healthcare jobs, tech jobs, all sorts of opportunity all over the place. And if you're self-employed, it is one of the most small business friendly states in the entire US. Plus, in addition to being a major financial hub, it is also home to 7 Fortune 500 companies, including Bank of America, Centene Corporation, Dollar Tree, Duke Energy, Honeywell, Lowe's, and Nucor. Just within finance, many large banks are here, including Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Truist, and many other ones you probably haven't even heard of that have large presences here. And for healthcare, Atrium and Novant both have huge presences here, with tens of thousands of job opportunities across pharmacies, medical centers, hospitals, and much more. Plus, just to illustrate how crazy the jobs market is here, our unemployment rate's about 40% lower than the national average, and our jobs growth has outpaced the national average by 60%. So there's a ton of opportunity here. I don't really know how to put it any other way. And of course, while there is so much opportunity, there will also be some challenges you need to consider. Competition can be stiff, especially for high demand roles, and some sectors in industry will leave you with the decision between either spending more on housing by a good bit and having a really easy commute, or having a longer commute but having a much lower cost of housing. So it's just something to be aware of. And while your current career is absolutely important, if you're planning to start a new career or start a family, education is also something you're gonna wanna know about. Specifically, you might wonder how the education opportunities here prepare people for that thriving job market. So let's explore education. One of the most common questions I get and biggest draws to Charlotte is the education opportunities here. Primary, secondary, and college education all have a ton of great options, and we'll go through some of those here in just a second. The city's home to some very competitive school districts and many universities that you probably recognize. Charlotte-Mecklenburg Schools is one of the largest school districts in North Carolina and the 18th largest in the US, with more than 18,000 employees ranging from teachers and principals to assistants, custodians, and secretaries. And according to niche.com, here are the best colleges in North Carolina in 2024. Counting down from number 10 is UNC Wilmington, UNC Charlotte, UNC Greensboro, App State, UNC School of the Arts, North Carolina State University, Wake Forest, UNC Chapel Hill, Davidson College, and of course, Duke University. And according to greatschools.org, Charlotte has a ton of top rated options in and around the city, including 43 elementary schools, 16 middle schools, and 24 high schools that all scored an 8 or above, which is top grade by greatschools.org. Schools like Ardrey-Kell High and Providence High have received the College Success Award, indicating their exemplary role in preparing students for college. Plus, with a total of 671 preschools, 234 elementary schools, 123 middle schools, and 85 high schools, there is an endless supply of education options in and around Charlotte. And just Charlotte-Mecklenburg Schools alone has over 143,000 students across 180 campuses. Plus, they have a ton of specialized programs, including options for technical schools, early college opportunities, and caterings for students that either have special interests or are just very gifted. But while many institutions shine, are there any shadows in this academic picture? Like any large city, Charlotte does have its educational disparities. And some schools, despite best efforts, have faced challenges with lack of funding and resources, infrastructure, student equity, and even drugs. Quality education is a significant pull, but what about the overall well-being of residents? Let's take Charlotte's pulse on healthcare. A wise man once said that if you don't have your health, then nothing else really matters. So it's not surprising that one of the most common questions I get from people thinking about moving to Charlotte is, what's the healthcare like, and is it a place they want to consider making home? The city does boast top-tier hospitals and treatment centers for just about everything, from routine checkups all the way to specialized treatment. In fact, whether you're in Charlotte proper or any of the towns surrounding Charlotte, they all have a major healthcare hub nearby if it's not in the actual town itself. The two major players in the Charlotte region, like I mentioned before, are Novant and Atrium, and while the city is equipped with state-of-the-art medical facilities, it's not devoid of problems. Just like any major city, wait times in certain hospitals can be long, and for certain specialized treatments, you might have to travel a bit. So with health checked off the list, let's talk about the next most common question I get. Safety. Is Charlotte a safe city to live in? Any large city is going to have its safety challenges, but how does Charlotte chalk up against other major metro areas? And I'll let you in on a little secret. I gave a keynote earlier this year. One of the most important factors you would look at when investing, whether it's for your own personal primary property or an investment property in any area, is, do you see a steady decline in crime rates? So let's look at the actual data for Charlotte. Charlotte has made significant strides in ensuring the safety and security of residents. From community initiatives to surveillance measures, the city has been trying to be more proactive in its approach. According to the CMPD's 2023 quarterly safety report, violent crimes decreased by 6% compared to the same time frame in 2023. Many neighborhoods in Charlotte offer a suburban feel, which is often associated with lower crime rates and a higher safety index. Plus, Charlotte scored a 77.79 safety index rating for walking alone during daylight hours, which indicates a high level of comfortable safety for day-to-day activities. Now, of course, no city is without its dark corners, so what about crime? Despite the city's commendable efforts and significant progress, there are still pockets in Charlotte where crime rates are a concern. Residents and visitors may be expected to stay informed and exercise caution in certain neighborhoods. The city itself has a crime rate of about 4,077 crimes per 100,000 people, which is 74% higher than the national average. and it has a safety index scoring of 53.07, which is just about 3 points above New York's safety scale of 50.17. There's also a significant increase in auto thefts by about double in 2023 over 2022, which was largely attributed to a social media trend known as the Kia Challenge. All in all, I tell all my clients that safety is a very personal thing. Depending on how you grew up, depending on what you're comfortable with, you might be comfortable with something that somebody else is not at all comfortable with, and vice versa. So I won't make that decision for you. But before we would seriously look at buying anything, I'll show you the data, let you make a decision for yourself on whether or not you would feel safe in that home. Now, speaking of automobiles, how do people get around here? Let's hit the road and explore transportation in Charlotte. So is getting around in Charlotte a smooth, easy ride or a bumpy journey? So for this, we're going to talk about public transportation, we're going to talk about the roads, we're going to talk about everything you need to know, including the absolute worst spots you want to avoid during rush hour so you don't get stuck, and how you can make sure you don't end up with a commute that you didn't really know what you were getting into when you're buying a house, and how we help you prevent that. So let's talk about highways. The most common way that people get around in the city is going to be by car, and it does have a very extensive road system. So one of the first things that I noticed, and most people notice when they get here, is the entire street system for Charlotte is not laid out in nice, neat rows and columns. Instead, it's laid out in more like kind of a spider web layout. And the spider web does have the circle around the outside. That's I-485, which is the loop, the inner and outer loop around the city. Then there's I-77 going north to south, and there's I-85 going east to west. Now, 77, when it comes down, it does go a little bit to the west, and I-85, although it does go straight west out of the city, does come from the northeast. There still are state highways and plenty of ways to get around, but those are the major thoroughfares that you want to keep in mind when you're looking at the map. Again, we'll share the worst congestion spots you need to avoid here in just a second, but when we're talking about public transportation, the city does have a very extensive bus system. It's got trolleys, and of course, one of the most famous things people will talk about is it's got the light rail. The light rail runs from the northeast in the university area all the way down to the southwest in Pineville. It does go through the center of the city, and much of the banking district does use that to commute from South End and from other areas along there. Two of my personal favorite neighborhoods that the light rail does go through to give you wonderful access to the city are going to be Noda or North Davidson, and of course South End. Plus, one of the things I absolutely love is because of that spider web kind of layout, even if there is congestion going one way from one place to another on a commute or just getting around to run errands, there's always at least 2 or 3 different ways to go from one place to another. So usually there's some way to take the back roads and get to your destination in a pretty efficient manner. But with growth comes congestion, and there are definitely going to be some roadblocks ahead. Like most major cities, Charlotte is not immune to traffic woes. In fact, there are many times where I've been sitting on the interstate in basically standstill traffic. Now, the good thing is there's only a handful of places that I'll share here in just a second where that will happen. But one of the other downsides is because it's very much a commuter city, unless you're along the light rail or one of those other main modes of public transportation, you're gonna need a car, you're gonna want a car, you're gonna get around primarily by driving. And so sometimes you're gonna find yourself stuck in traffic, and especially here. So you'll notice when you move here, everybody's super kind and genuine, and that's just one of the wonderful things about the South. I don't know what happens, but when people get on the road, there's so much craziness. Like, people will just merge 4 lanes of traffic like it's nothing. You'll see people who are speeding along. It's not as bad as other areas like Raleigh. I know Raleigh has terrible issues with street racing. Charlotte has a little bit of issues with street racing, but it's not nearly as bad as Raleigh from what I've seen and heard. And the construction is everywhere because they are trying to widen the roads and expand the infrastructure, because nobody could predict the mass influx of people to the area. Because again, the other pros of the area, at least for me and for a lot of other people, greatly outweigh the cons. But the worst congestion spots are going to be the non-toll road part of 77, especially when you're getting into Huntersville going up to Mooresville. Personally, I've never seen where the toll lane is congested at all. So if you're willing to throw a couple of bucks to the local government, you can always just fly along there. In fact, I've never seen anybody going below 65 or 70 on the toll path portion. But on the non-toll path portion, those lanes I see all the time at literally, it's a parking lot. And I've been stuck in that before because I was trying to cheap out for a couple bucks. Don't recommend it. It sucks. Besides that, if you're going west out of the city or into the city, there is a congestion point just outside of the 485 loop on 85 westbound going into Gastonia. That also sucks so much. There's never a reason for why it's congested and backed up, but every single time there's no change in the number of lanes. There's nobody driving crazy. It's just kind of windy, going back and forth, and so people brake, people behind them brake even more, and you get ghost traffic jams, which if you ever want to nerd out on something, go look that up. Plus, if it ever has inclement weather here, people don't know how to drive, so don't go out. The weather itself is not really ever an issue, but people on the roads, even if it's just heavy rain, especially if it's slick with a little bit of sleet or a little bit of ice, stay off the roads. Other people are crazy, and I want you to stay safe. So speaking of the weather, let's talk about what the climate is like here and one of my favorite aspects of why I moved to this place. So sunshine, rain, snow, incredible heat, freezing cold. I don't know, what are you gonna find when you move here? Let's talk about it. So in my opinion, I think Charlotte is really the best of all different worlds when it comes to weather. You got all four seasons. It's never too cold during the winter. It's never too hot during the summer. You get a little bit of the humidity during the summer, but it's not as bad as some other places I've lived, like Atlanta or even certain parts of the Midwest. And you're not getting massive blizzards or any sort of crazy snow, really, like almost at most years we go without snow at all. So it's a very temperate climate, despite the fact that we still do have all four seasons throughout the year. Summers are usually pretty hot and humid, with July typically being the warmest month of the year with an average temperature of 89 degrees Fahrenheit. Winters are short and cool, with January being the coldest month, showcasing an average low of about 30 degrees Fahrenheit. And I'll also add that during the winter time, we can go through some spells of kind of cloudy, rainy, gloomy for a few days or a few weeks at a time, because it does get kind of rainy sometimes during the winter. But I do experience seasonal depression, and while I do experience that, here has been honestly one of the happiest places that I've ever lived, because we do have, on average, 218 days of sunshine a year. There's tons of sunshine during the summer, during the winter. It is so beautiful, and it's almost like we have a really extended springtime and fall time, where it's really mild days. It might get a little bit chilly at night, but it's just absolutely beautiful weather. And there's usually only a few weeks during the winter where I'm not comfortable in shorts and a t-shirt. I have had many of the local people here tell me that I'm absolutely crazy for that. It might just be the Indiana Hoosier boy deep inside me that still thinks that, 45, 55 degrees is pretty warm, but I still absolutely enjoy it. And if you're coming from the Northeast, you're coming from the northern Midwest, like Minneapolis, New York, Boston, any of those, Syracuse, you're gonna absolutely love it here. It is so nice throughout the winter. You will thank yourself so much, and I always joke with especially my northern Midwesterners, I will mail you a snow shovel to help you get through your last winter before you get here. And I would love to help you make this winter your last winter in the great cold northern Midwest and Northeast. And while some people say every cloud has a silver lining, every silver lining may also come with a cloud. So what's the downside to this climate? While Charlotte itself is not super prone to any sort of natural disaster, you will see tropical storms give us a lot of rain indirectly, like for instance during Hurricane Ian. After it went across Florida and went into the Atlantic Ocean, it then boomeranged into the South Carolina coast and hit Myrtle Beach moderately hard. And by the time it got to Charlotte, it really didn't have any strength left to the storm, but there was a significant amount of rain. And so during the hurricane season, there will sometimes be days or weeks where we get a significant amount of rain as a result of those tropical storms further south. Also, if you are moving from the Northeast, so places like New York City, upstate New York, Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, those areas, the summers here will be significantly warmer, with an average temperature of about 89 to 90 degrees as the high. And also it will be more humid. That's one of the things you see throughout the summers here is a lot of humidity, a lot of bugs, and it's bearable. You just have to be prepared to know how to deal with it. So beyond just numbers and temperatures, a lot of the climate here has to do with the geography surrounding Charlotte. Mountains, beaches, cityscapes, what does Charlotte have to offer? Charlotte's geographical location is one of the biggest draws to the area. If you love to go hiking, camping, you'd like maybe going snowboarding or skiing, the mountains are just a quick 2-hour drive away. There's tons of hiking trails, hiking spots. It's super beautiful, and especially during the fall months, the leaves change in color. It's so pretty, and we get a ton of tourism to the state just for that alone. It's incredible that it's in your backyard. If the beach is more your scene, the beach is only about 3 hours away. There's a ton of different beaches in North and South Carolina, all up and down the coast that are beautiful with tons to offer. Beautiful during the summer, lots to go, places you can go boating, great seafood. There's a ton to do there and go check out. And if the urban life is more your sort of life, you want to go see new cities, new areas, go do new things in new places, there's tons of different urban areas that you can drive to in just a few hours. Asheville's only 2 hours away. Raleigh's only 2.5 hours. Charleston, 3.5 hours. Atlanta, 4 hours by car or just a really quick flight. You can fly to New York, 2 hours. DC, less than 2 hours. Miami, Florida, 2.5 hours. It's easy to get around, and if you want to go to the mountains, you can go to the Blue Ridge Parkway for scenic drives, the Pisgah National Forest for hiking and camping, and Asheville has a thriving arts and culture scene. If the beach is more your scene, the Outer Banks has historic lighthouses and the Wright Brothers National Memorial. Myrtle Beach has family-friendly resorts and golfing, and especially up and down the coast, there are tons to do. And Charleston has historic downtown areas and beautiful gardens you absolutely got to check out. But of course, every location has its trade-offs, and Charlotte does too. One of the biggest complaints I hear is that while we have access to everything, we don't actually have anything in the city besides the city itself. So if you want to go to the mountains, you have to drive 2 hours. If you want to go to the coast, you have to drive 3.5 hours. So speaking of access to the city, let's talk about the things to do here, the entertainment, the activities. So from tee off to touchdown, from the first act to the finale, what does Charlotte's entertainment scene have to offer? So Charlotte is a pretty notable hub for entertainment. We have a lot of different professional sports teams, which I'll get into here in just a second. And we also do have a pretty active theater and live music and art scene, which was one of the things I really enjoyed when I first came here. Personally, I love electronic music, and there's a huge electronic music scene here. It's not going to be as big as New York or Chicago or Atlanta, but it is, I would say, pretty close. It's growing close to the size of Atlanta. I did live in Atlanta for a while, so I do speak from experience. And especially when it comes to sports, there's always events to attend. So Charlotte is home to the Carolina Panthers, the Charlotte Hornets, and also hosts Charlotte FC, as well as the Charlotte Checkers. If you are more of a golf fanatic, Charlotte boasts numerous different golf courses, including Quail Hollow, which has hosted the PGA Tour's Wells Fargo Championship. And the city does have a variety of different public and private golf courses suitable for all skill levels, and some pretty famous ones like the Trump National Golf Course. And if you know anything about Charlotte, you also know that Charlotte, or the Queen City, is also known as the NASCAR capital of the world. NASCAR and racing in general is huge here. Everybody knows or has been to the ZMAX Dragway, to the Charlotte Motor Speedway just next door, also in Concord. There's so much that goes on for racing here. You'll see festivals, all sorts of events that go on throughout the year, and it really is a huge part of the culture here. We also do have the NASCAR Hall of Fame Museum here, and it's a huge part of the local culture here. And for reference, the Bank of America Stadium and the Spectrum Center are the two key sports arenas that you need to be aware of in the city. But of course, every show has its intermission, and in this case, it's how crazy and crowded things can get, especially during some of the huge events. And while you do have a ton of entertainment options, you will still have to shell out for some of them. They won't be super cheap. And compared to other cities you might be coming from, like Chicago or New York, the offering of plays, symphonies, and other cultural events is growing, but it is not going to be what you would find places like that. And if you are a huge NHL fan, like my girlfriend, then you'll have to go up to Raleigh to catch any of the NHL games. And if you are a huge baseball fan, I am sorry, the Carolinas don't have any professional baseball. I will say though, in the northeast side of the city, we do have a minor league team, which is the Kannapolis Cannonballers, and that is a ton of fun to go and watch them live. So the entertainment options might be fun for the weekends, but let's talk about the living, the lifestyle, the day-to-day, what it's actually like to call this place home. Charlotte offers a diverse range of neighborhoods and suburbs, so whether you're into the outdoors, whether you like food, or whether you just like to enjoy some vibrant nightlife, Charlotte will have something for everyone. And if you're into food specifically, Charlotte and the South in general is known for incredible Southern style cooking. There's a lot of great local spots around Charlotte. And also, when you get into the city, there's a huge diverse range of basically everything you could ever hope to find cuisine-wise, including Latin American cuisine. So we've got Calle Sol, which blends Cuban and Peruvian dishes with some Florida influence. Little Mama's is known for an old school Italian offering, including house-made pasta and a unique mozzarella bar. We also have authentic Tex-Mex like Paco Tacos and Tequila, and for barbecue enthusiasts, Midwood Smokehouse also provides a taste of North Carolina barbecue. And of course, the Smoke Pit is also very famous around here too. Yafo Kitchen offers Middle Eastern and Mediterranean cuisine with ingredients sourced from Israel, elevating street food into a restaurant experience with options for vegetarians and vegans as well. And with over 210 parks and nature preserves, Charlotte offers ample green space for outdoor activities, and Freedom Park and Romare Bearden Park are among favorites for locals and visitors alike. Plus, the city does have what I would consider to be a pretty vibrant nightlife. We have a lot of small, local, underground venues, which I think is really cool. And we also have, the big mega venues that host really, really huge concerts. But two of the local spots for local music and clubbing would be Black Box, which is a venue in Noda, and Trio, which is a venue that just opened in South End. But of course, every lifestyle will have some quirks that you need to take into account because it just might not be for you. And here in Charlotte, while the warm weather is very nice throughout the year, especially if you're coming from someplace really cold, it can also attract lots of pests like the bugs during the summer. There's spiders, there's snakes, and you see videos of some pretty crazy stuff here. Personally, I haven't seen a snake in the 3 years that I've lived here, but I do know other people that have sworn by seeing crazy stuff. I have seen some large spiders. I remember one time I was doing a showing, I walked outside onto the patio, turned around, looked, and then about 10 feet above the door, there was a spider that, kid you not, was probably 2 inches in diameter. I said, hell no, and I went back in through the other side of the house, closed the door from the inside, and if I had seen it while I was in the house, I might have burnt the house down. Also, if you're a gardening enthusiast, you might find the heavy, red, thick clay soil here pretty challenging. Some people do. So from daily life to the city as a whole, what is Charlotte really like? Like, we talked about the lifestyle, but what is the cityscape like? So one of the first things I noticed after moving here is Charlotte is so clean. And in fact, it's ranked as one of the top cleanest cities in the entire US, and it really shines through. Plus, the city has so many parks. That's one of the other things I noticed shortly after moving here. As you drive through the city, you can't help but pass multiple parks along the way, even in the actual inner city, which personally I love, having lots of green space to relax and rejuvenate, take a Sunday walk with my dog, or just get in a quick jog in the morning. You can do that really anywhere. And also, this makes for a very interesting skyline because there's so much nature that's interwoven with the beautiful cityscape. It just gives it such a unique feel where you feel very connected to nature even when you're in the middle of the actual city. Plus, the city has one of the lowest rates of homelessness out of any major US city, ranking 42 out of 50 on a recent research study. For this purpose, lower on this list is better. Now, while this helps explain why this is one of the most popular places to move to, every city will have its shadows. Parts of Charlotte were historically used as landfills, particularly areas on the west side of the city. And while it may not be immediately evident, it is something that some people might find concerning. But the good news is we are able to screen individual plots of land to make sure that that wasn't an issue and there are no ecological concerns you might need to be aware of. Plus, because of the strong banking influence, the city does have a more utilitarian and affluent vibe that I do know some people have found really off-putting. Personally, I love the city. I love everything from the feel to the way the lifestyle is, but I do know some people have found that to be not their cup of tea. Now, a city's vibe is going to be influenced by culture. One of the biggest influences, in fact, is going to be the culture. So beyond the skyscrapers, beyond the parks, what is the cultural heartbeat of Charlotte, and what vibe does that give the city? So Charlotte is a melting pot of tradition. It's got a very strong French influence. In fact, French is still the third most common language here behind English and Spanish. It's known as a very warm and welcoming city. You go to restaurants, you go out in the park, you see people, everybody's waving, everybody's really friendly. It's a great, very community type of feel. Even when you're in the city, everywhere you go, the Southern hospitality that you hear about really rings true. And I grew up in the Midwest, so there's that same type of friendliness, except it's more a fake kind of, everybody feels like they owe it to you. But here, it's very warm, it's very genuine, and everybody that I've helped move here, when they come and they visit, they see it for themselves. There's no way to explain it until you actually go and experience it for yourself. Plus, there is a diverse range of different spiritual and religious communities that are thriving here. So for whatever you believe, you can definitely find other people that share your beliefs here. And many people say that Charlotte has no culture, but I think they're full of BS, because it really does have a nice blend of the traditional and the modern. And as a whole, I think Charlotte does have a really cool, unique culture. But every culture will have its drawbacks, and Charlotte, while it is culturally rich and has a very rich history, there are areas and aspects of the cities that are just not diverse, as you would see with any metropolitan area or major city. Now, of course, the culture and beliefs go hand in hand with politics. And so what is the political pulse on Charlotte? Being in a purple state, Charlotte offers a relatively balanced political perspective, and I've seen people be very respectful of other people with differing beliefs of all sorts, and that's something that I can't say for many other places I've lived. So it's very refreshing here, and one of my favorite things about this place. You will see that the urban areas tend to be very heavily blue, the rural areas tend to be very heavily red, and there are exceptions to both of those. So for instance, in the east side of the state, there are some rural areas that are very heavily blue. There's also some urban areas like Wilmington that are very heavily red. There's, again, a lot of diversity of opinion throughout the entire state, but one of the things I've heard everyone pretty much unanimously say is if you are coming to North Carolina or Charlotte to get away from policies that did not give you conditions that you liked, then please leave those where you're coming from. Don't shoot the messenger. It's just something you'll hear people say a lot here. But of course, politics is never without debate, and so some of the cons that may not be really today, like I said, everybody tends to be very respectful here. I really hope to see that continue. So whether you consider it a pro or a con, if you like being around people that have beliefs that may very greatly differ from yours, then you'll love this place. And if you can't stand it, don't move here. So if you've enjoyed this pros and cons of living in Charlotte, North Carolina, you might want to check out the top 7 suburbs here, figure out where you might want to live. And if you already decided you do want to make this place home, you just want to learn how you can get a 2.8% rate, so you're not paying these crazy 8, 9, 10% rates like everybody else. There's 3 specific secret strategies we use with all our clients. Scan the QR code up here, and you can get access to a video where I break down exactly how you can get as low as a 2.8 rate. So go ahead, watch that video on the top 7 suburbs, or scan the QR code to find out how you can get a crazy low rate. And as always, until next time, hope to show you around town.